All right, let's jump right into this. Picture this. You're finally settling into your seat for a massive long-haul journey. You've got your movies all picked out, those noise-canceling headphones are on, and you are totally ready to cross the Atlantic Ocean and head back home to the US. But then, instead of staring out at the deep blue ocean, you look out the window and see the European coastline, and suddenly, you're landing exactly where you started. Well, in today's explainer, we're unpacking the incredibly dramatic, sudden U-turn of Alaska Airlines flight AS181. We're going to break down exactly what went down, high above Europe, why it happened, and the pretty fascinating business strategy that put this specific plane in the sky in the first place. So, to really wrap our heads around this, we need to drop right into the cockpit on July 19th. The flight crew is dealing with a massive responsibility here. They're navigating a highly sophisticated aircraft loaded up with passengers and heavy fuel across continents and an entire ocean. And, everything seems perfectly routine until, right in the middle of their journey, something happens that forces the crew to make a critical split-second decision. They completely abandon their transatlantic crossing. So what exactly triggers a highly trained crew to halt a massive international flight right in its tracks? To ground this story in reality, let's talk hardware for a second. The aircraft involved here is a Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner. Specifically, it's registered as N780HA, and it is an absolute beast of a machine, designed specifically for these kinds of intercontinental leaps. Its destination on that day was Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, SIA for short. So we've got this incredibly capable aircraft heading for a major American hub, but as we now know, it never actually made it there on July 19th. Section 1. Departure and Emergency Declaration. Okay, so to understand the emergency itself, we have to look at the routine departure that led up to it. Before that sudden U-turn, flight AS181 was actually making fantastic progress through some really busy European airspace. We start at 0 hours. The aircraft departs Rome Fiumicino Airport, known as FCO, at about 15:25 local time. Flight tracking data shows that the 787 climbed totally normally after takeoff. Over the next couple of hours, they're cruising northwest, cutting right across Italy, over southern France, and then they cross the English Channel. Honestly, they are perfectly on schedule. But then, while cruising over the United Kingdom, literally right before they're about to commit to crossing the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, the flight crew declares an emergency. The oceanic crossing is immediately called off. Section 2. The U-turn and fuel dump. Now, when you hear the word emergency, it is so easy to picture total chaos in the cockpit, right? But aviation is built on rigorous training. The Alaska Airlines crew didn't panic. They executed a highly methodical, calculated process to guarantee everyone's safety. Step 1. Declare the emergency. They do this to get immediate priority handling from air traffic control and to get emergency services ready on the ground. Step 2. The U-turn. Now, they don't just yank the steering column and fly straight back to the runway. They navigate back south and enter a holding pattern over the Mediterranean Sea. Why? Well, that brings us to step 3, reducing landing weight. A plane fully fueled for a flight to Seattle is incredibly heavy. I mean, way too heavy to safely land right away without risking serious structural damage to the aircraft. So they have to burn off or dump that fuel over the Mediterranean until they reach a safe landing weight. Only after that weight is gone do they proceed to step 4, a safe approach back to base. It's honestly a masterclass in safety protocol. And there's this quote from aviation experts that I think is absolutely crucial to keep in mind here. An emergency declaration does not necessarily indicate an imminent danger. Deciding to return to the departure airport is actually a standard, precautionary procedure. If a flight crew detects abnormal engine indications on a long flight, the rulebook says they need to sort it out before committing to an ocean crossing, because out there, diversion airports are practically non-existent. It might sound scary to passengers, but this is exactly the kind of cautious, by-the-book decision-making you want your pilots doing. By the way, if you're finding this step-by-step breakdown helpful, definitely hit the like button on this explainer. And if you know someone who gets super anxious about flying, share this with them. Honestly, understanding the strict, methodical safety procedures that govern these flights is one of the absolute best ways to calm travel anxiety. And hey, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our deep dives. Section 3. A safe return to Rome. Wrapping up the immediate incident, the outcome was exactly what you'd hope for. The flight crew executed their holding pattern over the Med, shed all that necessary weight, and headed on final approach right back to where they started. The Boeing 787 landed perfectly safely at Rome Fiumicino Airport without any further issues. Because they declared that emergency back in step 1, fire trucks and emergency services were already positioned on the runway as a strict precaution. But the best part? There were 0 reported injuries among the passengers or the crew. Now, as for the exact cause of those abnormal engine indications, The airline hasn't officially disclosed a detailed technical explanation just yet. The aircraft was grounded pending some very thorough engineering inspections to figure out what triggered it. Because it ended in a completely safe landing, aviation authorities haven't announced a formal investigation. Real quick, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because now that we've covered the micro details of Flight AS181's safe return, we need to zoom out a bit. We've got to look at the macro picture. Because for a lot of you watching from the US, there's a pretty glaring question we haven't actually answered yet. Section 4. Alaska's European expansion. If you follow American air travel, you might be scratching your head thinking, wait, since when does Alaska Airlines fly out of Rome? How does an airline that's famous for its West Coast and domestic routes suddenly operate transatlantic flights from Italy? Well, the brilliant business context here is that this Rome to Seattle route is actually Alaska Airlines' first ever scheduled nonstop connection between the two cities. It's a seasonal service that just launched in April 2026. But how on earth did they get the planes to do it? This massive European expansion was enabled by a huge corporate maneuver, Alaska Airlines' acquisition of Hawaiian Airlines' widebody fleet. That acquisition gave Alaska the long-haul aircraft, specifically these Boeing 7879 Dreamliners, that they desperately needed to stretch their network across the pond to Europe. So this specific aircraft, N780HA, wasn't just flying some random route. It was operating one of the flagship routes of Alaska's incredibly ambitious international expansion. It is just amazing how a single flight's U-turn can teach us so much about aviation safety protocols, holding patterns, and even major corporate acquisitions. But now I want to hear from all of you. After learning about the intense safety procedures and the strict precautionary measures pilots take before crossing an ocean, how do you feel about transatlantic flights? Does seeing this standard of caution make you feel more secure about flying? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep that curiosity soaring.